Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Wednesday. It is hump day. Hump day, hump day, hump day. Self-care Wednesday. Self-care Wednesday, and we're back with part 4, or we're. I say we're because it's alive when I first do this, but I'm back with part 4 of Journey to Wholeness. A Journey to Wholeness. And today we're going to cover wholeness equals holiness and love is the essence of wholeness. I was doing some reading on that this morning and it's quite interesting. So let's get going. How about that? Again, I'm just going to read this because I'm going to tell you when I was reading this stuff, and I've read this a few times already, it kind of blew my mind because, I was talking about how I was gone, just trying to repair all the stuff in there. And how when we started doing this wholeness thing, it was kind of like, wow, it really hit me between the eyes. And it kind of opened something in me that really needed to be healed and opened. But as I started to read this part again, it was kind of like, wow, there's still so much more that I have to learn. There's still so much that I still have to go through. So let's get rolling. Again, I'm just going to read this and then we'll talk about it, okay? So did you know that wholeness and holiness are connected? They are connected. Holy comes from the Old English word halig, which means whole, healthy, entire, and complete. So you could think of it like hollow, but not hollow. I know when I say hollow, it's like, I think of like just a circle. I know, because circles can either be full or they can be hollow. I don't know. Forget I said that. But also hallow, right? Which is kind of sacred and holy and all that. So there you go. Halig, hallow. Maybe that's what I was looking for. My brain. So anyways, so to be whole means to be holy. Wholeness is holiness. And this is why when we have a direct experience of our wholeness, it tends to feel like a mystical experience of awe, gratitude, love, and reverie. And I'm still trying to find that, right? So it's like learning this wholeness and trying to become whole has kind of been, it's its own journey. It's its own adventure. So this journey to wholeness really is a journey. So again, this comes from lonerwolf.com. And today, because it is Wednesday and we're on part 4, I am going to post the link in all the places where I do the social media things. So let's see. So yeah, so I'll post it on YouTube, TikTok, and on the Facebook page, The Aloha Perspective. Okay, so those are the 3 places where you will find these links. So here we are at love is the essence of wholeness. What does every pathway to wholeness have in common? Love. If you stretch a human's body out, you will see that the heart is roughly at the center. Perhaps this is why wholeness is likened to the experience of Christ. Hold that thought. The symbol of Jesus on the cross is a metaphor for the heart. He is often depicted holding a heart with thorns wrapped around it, known as the Sacred Heart. Indeed, wholeness is a byproduct of connecting with, living with, and living from the heart. And it is this spiritual integration of the light and dark within us that helps us to awaken our true nature. In the words of the 3rd Chinese patriarch of Zen, true enlightenment and wholeness arise when we are without anxiety about non-perfection. Anxiety is a result of rejecting the imperfect within us. Now, I tend to get anxiety from time to time, and there is probably some truth to that, but as a person who struggles with having a dinged up mental health, anxiety can come from all kinds of places. But when you really kind of break it down, it is all these things that we're worried about, right? It's basically worried on steroids. So it is kind of us dealing with this imperfect thing inside of us. So love, or enlightenment and wholeness, results when we embrace the imperfect within us. So it was also when it talked about the Christ consciousness, if you click on the link where because it's highlighted in purple, it asks you to actually move away from the religious aspect. So, I mean, as a person, we see Christ, whether you are religious or not, as this figurehead, right? But of love, peace, harmony. And that's kind of what they're talking about there. So it says Christ consciousness equals the mystical term that refers to a spiritually evolved state of being It embodies the qualities of love, devotion, courage, and surrender. So again, the Christ consciousness is a mystical term that refers to a spiritually evolved state of being. It embodies the qualities of love, devotion, courage, and surrender. So don't get lost in where you think the meaning's coming from. Lose yourself in the idea of love, devotion, courage, and surrender. Now, surrender does not mean you're giving up. What it means is that you're surrendering to, if you have a higher power, whoever you turn your higher power focus to, that could be who you surrender to, or the universe, it's about letting go of control is basically what surrendering is. It's not saying, hi, I'm throwing up the white flag. It's saying, you know what? I can't do this on my own. I have to, figure out how to move forward, but with help. And a lot of times that's what the surrender is. It's letting go of control. I mean, there's all different ways you can look at surrender, as if you're giving up and saying, hey, I'm throwing in the white towel because, this is over. But in terms of finding the wholeness and finding that spirituality, surrender is about, trying to stop pushing against that wall that's not budging and say, okay, how can I go about this so that I can get past point A to get to point B? All right. So, let's go back over the wholeness and holiness. So to be whole is to be whole, healthy, entire, and complete, right? That's what halig means. I looked up the pronunciation. That's how they pronounced it. So we're going with it. Okay. We're going to go with it. But, so to be whole means to be holy. Now, again, I don't want people, because I know there's a lot of people that will watch this that are like, oh, who are, in the religious, who are religious. And there's people who are going to watch this who are not. And I don't want the people who are not to get lost in, some of these terms, because holy is, we identify it with religion, but basically to be holy means to just live as a good person, to be a good human. That's what it is in my eyes. And I don't want arguments. I don't want people telling me that I'm wrong or that I'm right. That's my experience. That's how I see it. And I think we're all entitled to our own opinions. So for the people who aren't religiously inclined, I just don't want you to get lost in these terms, because you're going to miss the whole point of what I'm talking about. And I know I've said this several times now in this show, but I think it's very important for us to remember that, because there are times when we disagree with something and we just hit stop, and it's kind of like, no, I'm out of it. So I want everyone to know that I'm kind of coming from a neutral place, from a middle place, just saying, look, when we talk about the word holy, it's about, that awe, gratitude, love, and reverie, that mystical experience. So, and everybody can have that. You don't have to be religious to have that mystical experience. So again, wholeness is holiness. And this is why even when we have a direct experience of wholeness, it tends to feel like a mystical experience of awe, gratitude, love, and reverie. So it's just that great feeling, right? That kind of elated feeling. And then again, love is the essence of wholeness. You can see why I did these together, because, they kind of go together, to be honest with you, but they're so short. It's not like the other ones where it's like it's so kind of expansive in its meanings. But again, we have love. What does every pathway to wholeness have in common? Love. And it does. So again, they talk about like the Christ consciousness, or indeed wholeness is a byproduct of connecting with and living from the heart. So connecting with and living from the heart. It's being faced with situations, right? And counting to 10 so we don't lose our ever-loving shit. Exactly. Because that can happen sometimes. And if you do, that doesn't make you a bad person. We have our days. We are human. We are born human. We're going to die human. And whatever we are after that, it's up to you. But in this particular level of existence, we are human. And we are going to have these moments where people are going to blow our minds, and it's either going to be in a good way or a spectacularly bad way. And, I read a good quote yesterday, and it says, how someone treats you is a reflection of them. How we react to it is a reflection of us. And that is true. And there are going to be times, like I said, where, we might lose our crap, right? We might just be like, oh my God. And then it feels like the whole world is falling apart. An ant walked over a stick and our whole lives are ruined, so, or, something that small, but that probably means that there's something happening in here. There's something going on in here or in here, in your body, mind, and soul. And they're not connecting. They're not, they're not seeing eye to eye on something. And that could mean that there's something that might be bothering you. Or, if you're on a healing journey, it's something that's coming up and needs to be healed. And a lot of times that's just how it happens, especially if we're not in tune to our feelings and we're constantly pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down, we're not going to jive with this thing that's coming up, and we're going to kind of feel a little displaced and a little bit lost. And I'll be honest, that's how sometimes things happen with me. It's like I didn't realize it until it was ready to become Mount Shelsuvius, and then it's just like, oh my God, everybody run for the hills because I'm about to explode. And it was all the healing. It was all the stuff that I pushed down and down and down. The very first therapist I saw in my early 20s, he told me that, because I ended up in therapy, to be honest, because I had pushed so much of my trauma down and just tried to forget about it and had pretty much thought I'd done a good job of it. But then all of a sudden, I'd be walking down the hallway and I would just have this complete rage just rise up from the center of me. And then, like, say this is a wall, it'd just be like, bam, I would just punch the wall. And I had no idea why. And then I would be fine. I know, weird, right? And it's just kind of like, okay. And after this happened for a while, at one point, the person I was seeing at the time saw this. And they're all like, I notice you do this a lot. And they're all, are you okay? And so I sat down and I told them everything. And they're like, maybe you need to see somebody. And I mean, that was the first person that really kind of made me understand that, therapy's not a bad thing. But of course, I went to therapy, told somebody very close to me that I did it, and they kind of poo-pooed it and said, no, blah, blah, blah. And, well, okay, I told my mom. And my mom says, no, I did not raise you to be that way. I raised you to be stronger. Now, I kind of hold back on that now because I don't want people to think I'm complaining about my mom. My mom grew up in a very different generation. But I guess the reason I want to share that it was my mom now is because if there are parents out there who, because what we often learn from our parents, right? And sometimes we do exactly the same things they do, and other times we move forward and grow from those experiences. And I'd like to think I grew from those experiences, and this is why I advocate now, because there are people who were young like that. I just wonder what would have happened if there was support. Or if I'd gone to my dad instead, and I never did go to my dad because she says, no, don't do that. And my dad and I talked about that a few times. Like, well, why would she say this? Like, I have no idea. It's like, you're the one that was married to her for almost 50 years. You tell me. So it's like, but there's just things, that we don't understand. And I think if you're a parent who's dealing with a child or an adult child who, your adult child, listen to them, hear them out, give them compassion. It's no fault of my parents that I ended up with depression. It is what it is. Yes, there was trauma, but depression runs in my family on both sides, and it's nothing to be stigmatized about. It's a chemical imbalance. I know some people say it's not, but I can tell you, having not been on the meds for about 2.5 months and being back on them now and pretty much metabolizing them now, I can see the difference. I can feel the difference. And I'm being honest, because at first I thought, well, these aren't working. What's the difference? Blah, blah, blah. And then I just noticed that I know some people will say, it's all in your head. No, trust me when I say it's not all in my head, because I was balancing myself I was on a very fine balance. I was like walking on a what do they call those balance beams in gymnastics, with trying to maintain my mental health. But I have to tell you that, it was tiring. It was exhausting. It was a lot of work, and it was worth the work. And I'm still doing a lot of those things that I was doing before to find that balance and to keep that balance. But I can feel the edge has been taken off. And it's not a big significant difference because I'm on the lowest dose of my antidepressant, because I only take one. But also I wasn't on my thyroid med, and thyroid stuff runs in my family too. So there's the thing, right? Let's talk about that for a second, because we're talking about wholeness and love, right? And I think a lot of times when you have a dinged up mental health, I think you feel like you're not worthy of wholeness, or you don't feel whole. Wholeness comes from inside of you. If you are struggling with a dinged up mental health and you're feeling stigmatized in every direction, stop looking for validation from people outside of you. You are the one who has to know your self-worth. You are the one who has to validate yourself first. That's where self-love comes in. That's where self-care comes in. That's where self-worth and self-respect and all those wonderful self-words come into play, is to how we feel about ourselves, how we make ourselves feel. And that's what's really, really important. Do not put your worth in someone else's hands. Do not put your worth in someone else's hands. That is the absolute wrong thing to do. I have done it, did not work out. Because then when things go sideways, you're like, oh, well, I'm not worthy. But that's not true. It just went sideways and it didn't work out. But we put the blame on ourselves. When things don't work out, we make ourselves feel bad about it. When things go sideways, we make ourselves feel bad about it. When it's usually a two-way street. So put your self-worth back in your hands. And if you're struggling with that, just remind yourself, hey, I'm breathing. I am here. Maybe I'm not living the life I want to live, or maybe you are, and you're still not happy. And that's okay. It's because something inside of you is missing. You are pouring from an empty cup, and you're filling that cup up with the joy that, maybe you, like I said, I've used this example before, where maybe you've done like a bunch of things for a bunch of people and it makes you feel great. But at the end of the day, when you go home, your cup may still feel empty because you're trying to fill it with somebody else's joy. Or maybe you're trying to give them the ultimate gift so that they shower you with all these compliments and all these wonderful adulation, thank yous and stuff. And it's just kind of all the adulation and all the excitement and all that. But then you go home and it's kind of like, oh. But what you should be doing is, yeah, it's great. Those are bonus feelings. Those feelings that people give you when they say, oh my God, this is so amazing. How did you think of that? And, in the whole process of you trying to impress them with something, you miss the fact that you thought of that. And that's where the validation should come from. That's what should be filling your cup, saying, hey, you know what? I know this person enjoyed this. For an example, right? I was watching Big Bang Theory last night, and I love that show. That's like one of the only shows that I can watch over and over and over again, no matter how many times I've seen the episode. And a lot of times it just ends up being background while I'm doing, while I'm writing or doing stuff. But there was an episode, if you're not familiar with the show, there's Penny and Leonard, who kind of had this on again, off again thing. And they're on again at this point. And everyone around her knows how to be romantic in their relationships. Except her, with Leonard. And Leonard does all these wonderful things for her. But she's like, I just don't get it. So she buys him a book. And she remembered that this is my favorite book. He was saying, oh yeah, I loved this book as a kid. It was a great book when I was a kid. It'd be great to have a first edition. Well, so she buys it for him in like a romantic gesture. And he's grateful for it, but he already bought it for himself. However, she starts worrying, I'm not good at this romantic stuff. And then all of a sudden she pulls out this box of stuff that he's, from all their relationships, everything that she's kept, throughout the several relationships that they've had until, spoiler alert, the show ended like 5 years ago. So if you don't know, they end up together. All right. But the progression of the relationship really worked for the show. However, she pulls out this box from all the stuff, like he's given to her and all the stuff they've been through over the years. And that's what he found romantic. It's not always about the biggest gesture. Because he's like, I can't believe you saved all this stuff. And she's like, well, it was from you. So it meant something to her. It was sentimental to her. And that's what he found romantic. It's not always about the big gestures. It's about the sentiment. It's about the being there for somebody. You know, I mean, when we fall down and, hurt ourselves, we run in the house, right? And mom and dad come running, mom or dad, or mom and dad, depending, come running with the Band-Aids. It's not that they're putting the Band-Aid on you. It's that they're not just handing you the Band-Aid and saying, okay, here, clean up your wound, put on the Band-Aid. I mean, yeah, when you get older, they teach you how to do these things because, you might move somewhere far away and they're not going to be there to put that Band-Aid on. But when you're a kid, they're nurturing you. They're showing you this love. And that's the same love you have to show yourself. I mean, when we are finally given the antiseptic and the Band-Aid to care for our own wounds, we don't just pour the stuff on it, right? No, we dab it like our parents did. We gently put the Band-Aid on. We close our eyes when we rip the Band-Aid off because it's like, oh my God, this is going to hurt. But we show ourselves that care. So if there's a hole in you and you're not feeling that wholeness and you're not feeling that love and you're not feeling that Christ consciousness that they talk about, again, which is a mystical term that refers to a spiritually evolved state of being, which embodies the qualities of love, devotion, courage, and surrender. If you're not feeling those things in yourself, treat that hole like that wound that your mom or your dad or your guardian, caregiver, whoever it was, used to take care of. Dab it gently with some love and, put that Band-Aid on it. But keep watching it as it heals. Fill your cup with your love. Fill your cup with self-love, with self-care, with self-worth, with self-respect. Validate yourself. If you took a drive, even a short drive, maybe you're just driving to the grocery store, right? Or maybe you're walking to the grocery store. I'm saying driving because I have to tell you, I'm finally getting this whole patience thing down, but boy, when I get behind the wheel, it's like, I don't drive like a maniac, but boy, I still get annoyed with people. It's like, I think what it is, it's just when I was growing up and learning how to drive, people were a little bit kinder. Everyone wasn't just, it's all about me. I mean, yesterday I'm driving home with sibling and this woman, or not yesterday, but the day before, and this woman is literally driving and doing this on her phone at the same time. And it's like, oh my God. It's but yeah, if you can make it home without being annoyed by someone, then, tell yourself, hey, way to go. Or maybe you went to the grocery store and you found something ASAP and you're like, oh, way to go. Compliment yourself on things. People might make fun of it if they hear you, but who cares? Who cares? Because you're working on your self-worth. You're working on you. You're working on your wholeness. You're working to have that mystical experience of love, devotion, courage, and surrender. You're looking towards that, living from, living with and from the heart. That's what wholeness is about. And I'm working on it. I am working on it. And remember what the third Chinese patriarch of Zen says. True enlightenment and wholeness arise when we are without anxiety about non-perfection. I know nobody wants to hear this, but we're all perfectly imperfect. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love being perfectly imperfect. And I'll tell you why. Because I used to try to be so perfect all the time. It drove me crazy. It drove me crazy. And that's because I had to control everything. Everything always had to be perfect. Maybe not me. I didn't feel perfect. I felt completely awkward. I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. Sometimes I still feel that way. So I tried to make everything I did perfect. And when it wouldn't work out and somebody said, well, it's okay. It's great. It doesn't have to be perfect. I would just be like, oh my God, what do you mean it's not perfect? I mean, they may have thought it was perfect, but they may have just been saying that to me because they know me, that I'm going for this perfection. But I zeroed in on the negative comments instead of the good comments, instead of the compliments. And that's what we do sometimes when we're trying to be so perfect. So find that enlightenment and that wholeness in our imperfections. Our flaws are what make us quirky. Our flaws are what make us who we are. They make us wonderful. They make us, stand out. They make us different. from one another. It'd be a boring planet if we were all the same person, right? I mean, I certainly would not want to be walking around a planet with a bunch of me's. It'd be boring. It would absolutely be boring. You know? And I'm a decent driver, so I'd have no one to yell at. I know. I had to throw that in there. So anyways, yeah. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Find your wholeness and your love. Okay? Live with and from the heart. That's where you're going to find your wholeness. Put your worth in your own hands. Okay? Put your worth in your own hands. Like I said, when you do nice things for other people, that's a bonus. That's the bonus feeling. But you should be filling your cup with your own joy, with your own love, with your own self-worth and self-respect. And the one way to do that is through self-care and through self-love. All right? Self-validate yourself. You don't have to be perfect for anybody. Because like I said, we're perfectly imperfect. Just love yourself as you are. I'm learning that. And I have to tell you, it's trippy and it's hard, but it is so worth it. I may not have this whole love and wholeness down thing yet, or living with and from the heart, but I'm getting there. And the more I get there, the more amazing it's like opening different doorways. It's like opening one door and seeing a bunch of rainbows, and then opening another door and seeing a bunch of unicorns, and then opening that third door and a bunch of rainbows and unicorns. So it's the pieces of the puzzle falling together. And it's going to create this beautiful picture for you. But you have to be willing to surrender that control and to go with the flow. Because really, when it all comes down to it, go with the flow is the biggest thing we're ever going to learn. And it's the hardest thing to learn. Because we all want to have, well, I don't want to say we all, but a lot of us, sorry, a lot of us just want to control everything. So going with the flow can be very, very difficult. And it's a little hard for me, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And the more I let go of control and the more I learn how to go with the flow, the better I begin to feel about myself. And I'm being honest, it's like a whole new world, right? So I'm not going to sing for you because, the Little Mermaid immediately popped in my head, but it is like a whole new world, right? So I know I've already said goodbye once. Have a good day. I will be back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. Anyone can watch under the Aloha Perspective on Facebook. You can catch the replay on the Aloha Perspective on YouTube. Or I do a shorter version of this on TikTok on the Aloha Perspective, where I also share it to Instagram under, yes, the Aloha Perspective. If you follow me on Twitter, you can find me on Shellbell's Quest, because the Aloha Perspective did not exist yet when I created that one. And, yeah, and if you already follow me on my Goalie Fan 1973, then you'll know I post there too. So those I post from YouTube. So if you're watching from Twitter, all right, and you've gotten this far, you can find the link for this article on the YouTube page, all right? So again, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.